welcome. I don't know who that person she just described was, but I would love to meet her. Before I get into the meat and bones of the talk, I want to spend a few minutes talking about myself, even though I'm not important, just so you're not spending the talk curious about this strange person in front of you. I find that as futurists, we're all about beating the odds. My history is a long history of beating the odds. My mother's womb was barren. They told her she would never have another child. She got pregnant with me. The father was never in our lives. They told her that the child for sure would miscarry. When I came out, they said for sure we'll die within a few days. After a few days, they said, okay, well, but it's going to be severely mentally handicapped. I'm doing okay. I grew up in the worst possible poverty that America has to offer. Trailer parks with holes in the roofs. We slept with the lights on so the bugs wouldn't come out. We accepted food handouts from church members and the government. And those days, and then after Mom died, I spent my youth just dreaming about a way to escape that, because I knew that we, not just as myself, but people like me, were meant for so much better than that. Even though we came from nothing, I managed to get a scholarship to USC for computer science. I spent a few years there. I dropped out. I got a little bored with what they were doing. I felt that it was not a good use of my time anymore, so I wanted to see the world, so I enlisted in the military. I was the worst airman in my squadron. They told me that I would be kicked out soon. I got 2 horrible performance reports, and they told me that I had not a good future in the military. I told them I was going to make one of the highest ranks in record time. So I made one of the highest ranks in record time, and I made every rank the first time, Staff Sergeant, Technical Sergeant, Master Sergeant. After 13 years, I was a Master Sergeant in the Air Force, and fortunately I outranked most of those people at that point. And I'd been struggling with gender dysphoria for a while. I knew inside, since I was a child, that something was wrong, that I was meant to be a woman. And they told me, well, you can't be a woman. Well, challenge accepted. And then I also faced a couple of other final frontiers, which puts us where we are, which is I always knew that money was a very, very interesting thing that wasn't maybe what it was on the surface, because we spend so much of our time chasing money, yet so few of us spend time thinking about what is money? Why do we even need money at all? And it was around that time I also discovered Alcor and a couple of other life extension and futurist communities that I'm very proud to be a part of, and I am not extremely familiar with People Unlimited, but wow, am I impressed with everyone I've met in this organization and everything you guys have done. It is an honor to be here in front of you today speaking. So, that's who I am. Let's talk about humans as a curious creature. And I don't want to step on anyone's religious beliefs, but we're going to be approaching this from just a petri dish standpoint of humans growing up and how they came to use money to begin with. Because these are the realizations we've had as we've gone through. That early humans, after this massive development of spoken language and this fact that we can now use sounds to communicate with each other, there came an issue of how to take care of the members of our own family. And early money, you know, we all learned in school it was trade and barter, but that's not really accurate. There's very little evidence of trade and barter being used. What it was the same way we use money probably in our inter-family units now. It's a concept called wasta, and it's basically your reputation. You have a reputation associated with who you are and what you do, and everyone knows that. So just as a thought experiment, if everyone outside this room ceased to exist, no offense for our streaming friends, you guys can come too. If everyone ceased to exist, we wouldn't need money anymore, because there's too few of us. There's like 150 of us total. That guy's an amazing fisherman, and we know he catches the best fish. So when he comes to me and he says, hey, I need a house built, I'm not going to like say, what's in it for me? He catches fish for all of us. And when we need new clothes, she's an amazing seamstress, and she takes care of us completely. So we just take care of each other. Along the way, though, these families became tribes, and they started to grow. They started to become too big, and you couldn't keep track of what everyone was doing. I know that, doesn't this guy, doesn't he just sit around all day? He doesn't contribute. So something else was needed to keep track of debts. And the secret of money is very simple. It's just a record of debts. It's a language of debts. The same way we speak spoken language and we learned how to write it down, money is just a language of debt. And we said, hey, let's use these leaves on this tree to keep track of debts. And then some jerk went and picked a bunch of them and made a bunch of fake debts, so that didn't last for long. So we all, depending on where our tribe grew up as a species, we found something in our environment. And if you take a historian and you point them at a location, they can figure out pretty quickly what will be used in that environment for money. Because it's always going to have a few qualities. It's going to be rare, it's going to be not easily duplicated, it's going to be something that's recognizable. There's a few qualities of money that always emerge, whether it's seashells or beads. And this very clever person came up to me one day and he's like, hey, I need you to build me a house, but I'm just gonna give you some of these colored beads. And I'm like, well, I don't really care about your beads, but like, why? Well, because it's a new technology and we're going to use these beads to keep track of our debts. And this worked really well until the dawn of the mega civilization. By the time the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Americas got started, especially by the time we started crossing oceans, local civilizations began to merge into something a little more curious and larger. And these little tiny forms of money we had been using locally weren't good enough anymore. We needed something else. You're probably with me already. What emerged is the universal debt ledger for all of humanity. And if it wasn't gold, it would have been something else. If there were no gold on this planet, we would have found something else. But gold was just the best fit. It's recognizable. It's hard to counterfeit. You have to dig it up out of the ground. You can divide it. It was the best money that had ever been invented. And that's why we spent so much of our precious development chasing it, hoarding it, learning new ways to value it and fashion it into jewelry and showing it off. In biology, there's this concept called costly signaling, where a songbird will spend a lot of its time perfecting a very intricate song just so it can show off and let all the other birds know, hey, look how much free time I have. Same way humans did. They fashioned gold jewelry. Hey, look how much extra gold I have. I can just wear it. So then, something really special happened in the past couple of 100 years because we developed a global civilization such that carrying around hunks of gold was no longer a realistic proposition. And governments did something very, very curious. They took pieces of paper and they wrote down on the piece of paper, this is equal to a gold. They abstracted the gold into a piece of paper. And that's how we got fiat, which is just government paper. Actually, you know what they did in the 70s? They crossed that line out. And they said, this isn't, you know what, this is just equal to $1 and just trust us. And so that's how the modern dollar was formed. And when we grew up in the 70s, 80s, 60s, whenever you grew up and your first thought, I mean, mine as a kid, I'm not going to speak for you, but it was like, I need to get some of these pieces of paper because I can buy candy with it. I can do so many cool things if I can get this paper, right? And you see, well, I saw the adults around me just dreaming about these pieces of paper because if they had enough of them, they could buy houses or cars, noble things like college education for their kids, all in pursuit of these pieces of paper. But we forgot along the way what these pieces of paper meant. And they meant the useful goods, services, and work that we all do. And that's all they're doing is keeping track of it. Around the dawn of the internet, some of the smartest people in the world got together. And we know they did this because in declassified NSA papers, one called How to Make a Mint, and you're welcome to Google this later, you can see some of the smartest scientists in the world concluding that it is imperative that we digitize money. The internet was blowing up. No longer was this a nerd's toy in the basements of labs and government facilities. The internet was going to be a thing. This is around 1995, 1996. But we got to put money on the internet. And how are we going to do it? I want to propose a thought experiment to you, just so I can put you in those scientists' shoes. Imagine that you are in Japan and you are in South Carolina, and you've got to send this person very quickly a large sum of money, $1 million, but you can't use a bank, you can't use a company, you can't do anything physical. You just have to send the money. It can be its own form of money, but you just have to send it across the internet. Oh, and no one can ever be able to copy it. And the smartest scientists puzzled over this, and they thought, how? how could this be done? Because you could take a file and you could say, okay, this file's money. But there's no way, even if you encrypted the living heck out of it, there's no way to stop that file from not being copied. Any file that you can imagine, and you've seen it yourself, we had a big storm in the early 2000s about file sharing and how information wanted to be free. However, the fact that we could so easily copy information now was a big deal. And they couldn't figure it out. I mean, this is an impossible problem, it seems like, because any file, any method of money can be copied. But we found a workaround, obviously, because we have banks now. We have Visa, we have Bank of America. And it works like this. Can I borrow your pad for a second? Yeah, your pad. Thank you, sweetie. This is the ledger, guys. She's been writing on it. She's keeping notes. It's very, very important. So what we're going to do, because this ledger is very, very important, we're going to trust it with the banker. You're the banker. I hope you do a good job, because we're all trusting you. So she's the banker. Now listen, it's super simple. Now if you want to send her $1 million, just tell her, and she's going to make a note of it, okay? The ledger is so important. If you go rob a bank, they'll probably give you the paper on hand. But to access the ledger, we have entire specialty fields in accounting that deal with the triple checking of this ledger. It's a big deal to keep track of these ledgers. And I don't even know if most humans realize what was happening, but that's how we decided to digitize money, ledgers. But it's very important because we're trusting you. You have to keep accurate records and don't just make fake money. Similar to the people who are picking leaves off trees, if you make fake debt, let's do another thought experiment. Let's say that we all agree to move to the leaf standard. We all get 10 leaves, and we're all going to just use leaves. And then I go and I pick 1,000,000 leaves. But you're on the leaf standard, and you can't pick more leaves because I control access to the sacred tree. What does that make me, and what does that make you? It's not right. It makes me the master in the system and you the slave, and that's not okay. That's not what money's supposed to be about. If it's supposed to represent the goodwill and the acts and the service and the goods that we can give to each other, it is a profoundly evil thing to gift yourself large sums of money out of nowhere, because then that puts you in an asymmetrical position against those who value and must use that money. So it's just very, very important that you don't make fake money on that piece of paper, okay? You promise? Okay, good. Well, what happened was, turns out that we figured out that if we just made up some money, listen, we're not going to make up that much fake money. We're just going to make up a little bit so we can afford a few extra trips and cool things, and you're not even going to feel it, because us in the front row, we're going to hold most of it. We're not going to like dilute it or anything. We're just going to hold it. It's going to be okay, and you guys, it'll be pretty much invisible to you. I mean, there'll be a little inflation as we go along, but you're not even going to, don't even worry about it. Then we realized we could take riskier and riskier bets with that paper that we had written a promise on. We got into a position where we had taken such risky bets. Guys, we've messed up. So listen, about what I told you earlier, I need you to make up like a lot of fake money. Like, don't tell them that. I mean, actually we're going to tell them, but we're going to disguise it with a bunch of fancy financial words they won't understand anyway. Just look at them. So, like a lot. Actually just keep making it up. Don't stop making up new money, and they probably won't even figure it out. It's just going to be it'll be fine. That was 2008. That's what happened. I mean, we can disguise it as quantitative easing and all these words that you're not designed to understand, but that's what it was when you really condense it. The problem is not money. Money is not the root of all evil. The root of all evil is the fact that the power to mint money corrupts. None of us are immune from the effects of power, not even myself. You give someone too much power, if they don't guard their access to that power, it will corrupt them. So, around 2008, something really magical happened. Some random person online named Satoshi Nakamoto, we still don't know who this individual was, whether it's a group of person, him, her, it doesn't really matter, and that's the point. And that's also why who I am doesn't matter, because I want you to be very skeptical of the words I tell you, and I want you to evaluate them on their own weight. Satoshi did a magical thing by not revealing who he, she, they was, because now the math, the code, and the solution stand by itself. That solution, out of nowhere, anonymously online, was the exact thing in the 90s that they said could not exist. The smartest people in the world got together and they said this can't exist. And yet humbly, online, some guy said, hey, guess what? I got this cool thing. You should probably check it out. And it was a piece of paper with impossible math on it. Math that humans had never seen before. And there's so many theories online about where this piece of paper came from. It's 8 pages. You're welcome to look it up. It's very easy to find. It describes a system by which the entire world could operate on a standard of money that didn't require any trust, that didn't require a central bank to manage the ledger. And it worked by using game theory, advanced economics, mathematics, and cryptography in this beautiful harmony. And here's how it worked in very simple terms. So if any of your friends ever ask you, how does Bitcoin work? You can explain it. Bitcoin's not a radical technology. Now the math behind it is. Cryptography, elliptic curve cryptography is very fancy. I mean, it takes like a PhD level to understand it, but you don't have to understand that to understand Bitcoin, because I don't understand that stuff either. All we did, is this ledger very important? Could I tear a few pieces of paper out of the back? Could you actually do that for me? Just tear a few pieces of paper out of the back. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much, sweetie. So here's what we're going to do. I love you, but you weren't super responsible with the ledger. So we're going to give everybody a copy of the ledger now. Now we all have a copy. Everyone in this room is going to have a copy of the ledger. And the only problem that remains now is who gets to write in that ledger, because we used to trust her. We solved that too. That's what Bitcoin did. We're all going to be competing, all of us, meaning our computers, but we'll just say us, to solve really, really hard math problems. This is where the cryptography comes in. So if I say, what's 23 times 5? The first person who has it, just shout it out, please. 23 times 5? 115. So I believe you said it first, so he gets to write in the ledger. And that's how Bitcoin works. Whoever solves the math problem first gets to write. Well, it's going to get less fair, because now he's going to give himself 25 new Bitcoins out of nowhere, because that's how it works. We all share the burden of minting new money, verifying the ledger, and the beautiful part is that without going too much into the math, every new math problem is based on the previous math problem. So that solution was 115, right? So what's 115 divided by 3? We're not going to actually shout out the answer this time. But as a very simple example, that's how a math problem can be based on the solution to the previous one. And whoever solved that math problem would get some free coins. And through the magic of cryptography, they would also be taking all the transactions that are proposed. So in Bitcoin, you would say, hey, you would shout to the network, hey, I want to send 1,000,000 Bitcoins or 1,000 Bitcoins to this person over here, who is not a person, by the way. This is just a random string of numbers and letters in the network. And whoever solved that through the magic of cryptography would award themselves a few extra Bitcoins, validate, support, defend the network, and bundle that transaction and a lot of other transactions together into a solution. Now, the problems that these computers are solving are not 2-digit multiplication problems. They're problems that are hundreds of digits long, that are so complex at this point that it takes all the computers on the Bitcoin network, which are vast, by the way. It destroys, it dwarfs the power of the closest list of supercomputers by a large number. It takes all those computers about 10 minutes to find a solution to this math problem. That's how hard it is. And the beauty of it is that if people start finding these solutions too fast, the Bitcoin network says, okay, we'll just make the problem harder. In that example, if they start getting the problems too quickly, I can just make the problem harder, such that it takes about 10 minutes every time for a solution to be found. So, if anyone ever says, do you understand Bitcoin? You do. Everyone has a copy of the ledger, and all of our computers compete to solve really hard math problems to determine who gets to write in that ledger. And any computer can compete. You could take your cell phone right now and start mining Bitcoins. And there is a chance, there is a very small chance, that your cell phone might be the next one to find that block in the entire world. And if it does, you're going to get some transaction fees. Because when you propose to send money, you're also saying, hey, I mean, just to sweeten the deal, if you do happen to bundle this transaction, I'll give you a few dollars. You're going to get those transaction fees, and you're going to get, at the time of speaking, about 12 new Bitcoins out of thin air. Just out of thin air. Because it's not money that's the root of all evil. It's the centralized, corrupt control and generation of money that's the root of evil. And so if we're just allowing anyone to possibly earn new money, that's not so bad, especially if it's a predictable curve that we all agree upon at the genesis of the system. The history of Bitcoin is very interesting because it came out in 2008 and you would think, oh my God, this is this amazing math that's never existed before. That's not what we did. We thought it was the stupidest thing we'd ever heard of. I did. I don't know about you. When I first heard about Bitcoin, I thought it was some kind of World of Warcraft gold. It was some kind of nerd thing. I mean, if you had that reaction, please don't feel bad because I think a lot of people do. And then I read the white paper, and I had a moment where I thought, oh, goodness, this is something else. This is not a better form of money. This is so many things. This is a financial virus that feeds on human greed. When we look at systems, we call them games. Game theory was popularized in the 20th century by looking at every abstract system as a game. Do any of your friends online sell like Lulu Rose or like multi-level marketing stuff? That's a game too. The game is designed to suck you in and profit someone at the top of the pyramid. Instagram is a game too. We play Instagram sometimes. It's not as bad of a game. It's not gonna like force you to spend a lot of money. It takes your time and it engages you with other people and it's a great social net and it's amazing because it lets us do a lot of things. It's a social language we speak online now. But the ultimate goal of Instagram as a game is to make Facebook money, which is not a bad thing. I mean, companies make money. Bitcoin was unique and special in a very important way because Bitcoin tries to suck you in by promising a better way to handle money, a better way to transmit money. Oh yeah, also, you can't create a decentralized financial system from nothing without accidentally making a few people rich. It's just not possible. So the value of Bitcoin has historically inflated quite significantly. But when you get sucked into cryptocurrencies and out of the fiat system of wealth, who are you trying to profit? Admittedly, the people who got there first are going to profit via the fact that now you are valuing these tokens. And now if I offer you, most of you in this room, if I offered you a Bitcoin for goods and services, you'd probably take it because it has value now. But ultimately, you're helping yourself. And that's what's so beautiful about the game behind Bitcoin, the game theory, is that when it sucks you into the game, it benefits you. And the ultimate goal is a benevolent goal to help yourself. Above game theory, we get into game design theory. And very few games in human history have ever had this quality. Democracy came close. So that's Bitcoin. And there's going to be a couple of questions at the end. If you want to ask another very simple question about Bitcoin, I'm happy to discuss it at any level you want. But I want to spend a few minutes also talking about some of the more advanced forms of Bitcoin that have emerged over the years. I once called Bitcoin a ruthless financial virus that would not stop until it consumed all value on Earth. That's kind of what it is. It's a social virus, it's a financial virus, but not in a bad way. Viruses are very viral. They spread rapidly throughout a population. Language was a virus, and it was a good one, because by playing the game of language, now we can express thoughts to each other. Because we all play the game called the English language, you didn't realize you were playing a game, but you are. There's rules, there's letters, there's grammar. Because we all play that game, even if you didn't choose to, we can now have this conversation. You can understand what's coming out of my mouth. Other than that, it would just be grunts, and advanced, higher thought would not be possible to transmit. So, I didn't predict, and it's very interesting, that around the mid-20 teens, around 2012 to 2014, a new form of math emerged, beyond even Bitcoin. Because, see, while they said that Bitcoin was not possible, decentralized, trustless money, not possible, what's really impossible is private, decentralized digital money. Because, see, by virtue of the way we do these math problems, we all have a copy of the ledger, right? So we can all read it. So we can actually trace the money as it gets generated from him and transferred over there and transferred over there, which sounds good in practice, because that way if someone does anything bad, criminals, we can trace that money all the way back to where it came from, and we can de-anonymize them and find out where they are. And it's happened. Around 2013, when humans first began to realize what Bitcoin was, because Bitcoin had zero value up until 2010, Does anyone know the first Bitcoin transaction in history? Or the first useful Bitcoin transaction where someone bought something, please. It was the pizza, you got it. Someone had, it was like a year or two after the genesis of Bitcoin, and someone had all these Bitcoins and said, I want to buy something of these things. And a guy across the ocean said, okay, if you give me 10,000, I'll buy you a pizza. Or 2 pizzas. It was a good deal, it was 2 pizzas. Well, they were worthless, so it made a lot of sense at the time. If I give you 1 million Katie tokens and someone goes, well, I'll give you a car for those 1 million Katie tokens. What are Katie tokens? No one gives a shit. Excuse my language, sorry. Anyway, so this was a really good deal at the time. And then Bitcoin was worth 1 cent, and then $1. You can sell your Bitcoins for $1. You better get out now while the getting's good. And Bitcoin expanded that way because people still continue to underestimate it. So around the time of the first really great bubble, Bitcoin was $1,000 each. A new anonymous form of math came out online via a white paper. It's not as talked about as Bitcoin. An anonymous author named Nicholas van Saberhagen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, authored a white paper that introduced the cryptonote standard. The cryptonote standard proposed a mathematical solution by which you could have Bitcoin. However, it would be private, and no one could read the ledger. The ledger itself would be encrypted such that we could all transact via this monetary standard. However, none of us can actually read the ledger. And I know that sounds a little hard to fathom. You're going to have to trust me on the magic of math behind it, that it is verified you can't create fake money. However, it is a decentralized monetary standard that anyone can compete on. The first implementation was called Monero, and it solved a very valid problem in cryptography. Because in 2013, right around the time the Bitcoin bubble was in full swing, a dark market had risen up around Bitcoin. Here's the thing about technology, guys. Technology doesn't create utopia by itself. When transhumanism, when AI, when immortality becomes mainstream, it's not going to create utopia. It's going to allow humans to be humans more effectively. I had a conversation with a few people several years ago, and I said, okay, I think we can all see now that we're going to be incredibly powerful and rich one day. Maybe immortal. So I think the only thing left is to become the kind of people that's worth that. So this incredible dark market had risen up, and you could buy literally anything you can imagine on this dark market using Bitcoins. And Bitcoin got a very negative connotation at first because this amazing new technology, we gave humans this incredible technology that they had never conceived of before. And the first thing they used it for was prostitution and buying murderers online. But it happens, it happens. Technology can bring out the worst in us. And the FBI, in this amazing, never before done analysis, traced the Bitcoins back to the person, the architect behind the Silk Road. And in this dramatic, I want you to imagine this like movie scene with me. He's sitting in the library with his Guy Fawkes mask on, probably, and his hood, and he's like typing on his keyboard. And like no kidding, like SWAT teams like infiltrate, like just bust into the library, like knocking over bookcases. By the way, this is all made up. This is not how it happened, but I imagine it happened this way. And just like the librarian gets like knocked over and like papers go everywhere. And then they like arrested him. He did get arrested, and he did get a life sentence and landmark case. I don't know if the librarian was involved, but that's what happened. And everyone was like, oh, it was so good that we could trace the Bitcoins. And maybe you yourself, if you've never heard of this stuff before, thinking yourself like, is privacy good? Yes, privacy is really good. What people do with privacy sometimes is bad, but that doesn't mean that we should be deprived of privacy. When the first immortals happen, what they do with that immortality may it sometimes be very evil, but that doesn't mean that humans should be deprived of the right to life. Privacy is good. And if you want to argue with me, I will have a grand argument with you. As soon as you turn over all your bank account passwords to me, and your Facebook passwords, obviously, you see where I'm going with this. Privacy is good. And deeper than that comes fungibility. Fungibility is not a very often talked about quality of money. Gold is fungible because every unit of gold equals another unit of gold. But as we learn with Bitcoin, it's not very fungible. Because one Bitcoin doesn't necessarily equal another Bitcoin. The Bitcoins used for the black market are tainted now, possibly. What if Russia decides, hey, we don't want Bitcoin's mined in America because that doesn't help Russia? Being able to trace money has a lot of Achilles heels to it. So, 2014, this new cryptocurrency comes out called Monero. Aeon, a couple of them came out. And by the way, I'm not trying to sell you anything, and I encourage you to be extremely skeptical of everything I say. I only talk about things that I find ethical and that I'm involved in. But these are projects I've been involved in and that I support because they had fair launches. They didn't try to sell anyone anything from the outset. The incentives were all aligned. They just launched and they said, hey, here's this cool new thing, and you're welcome to mine some of it. And it's not worth very much now. When I first heard about Monero, it was worth about 30 cents each. It's worth about $320 each now. It's gone up in the past couple of years. Aeon, when I first heard about Aeon, it was worth about half a cent each. Now it's worth about $4 or $5 each. But it does solve that problem. You can now transfer that $1 million to this lady over here in Japan, South Carolina, wherever. And now, not only does it happen, people get rewarded for it, but none of us ever even know that transaction happened. And furthermore, I can't even tell how much money you have. You could have a fortune or no money, and that is hidden from every prying eye that might want to know that information. Imagine the power, the personal power we will have, every man, woman, child being their own kingdom, when you have the power to hold your financial reserves free from any prying eyes. It would be as if the internet gave us freedom of information. As these forms of money get more advanced, they're giving us the freedom of money, the freedom to finally go back to when we were families and tribes and go, hey, I want to do something for you because you can do something for me. It might be a good thing, fishing, building a house, a bad thing, something nefarious. But that power is finally being given back to us thanks to math, thanks to benevolent architects who created a system where they weren't trying to profit, where they weren't trying to extract power from people, but rather empowering people. I just want to close this by cautioning you because a lot of people are excited about cryptocurrency now. Oh my goodness, I came from the Miami Bitcoin conference and there was ICOs and this promise and that promise and we're going to all have Lamborghinis on the moon. It's going to be incredible. Most of those people have no idea what they're talking about. They don't have the computing experience to deliver on those promises. They have enough experience to tell you a beautiful story and say, and I'm going to give you this incredible stuff if you just give me a little bit of money. And you too, and you too. And then they're going to fly away in the night like they built a monorail and just left it to crumble. And it's sad that a lot of people are going to have their value destroyed this way. I can't give you a foolproof solution to spotting a good cryptocurrency versus a bad cryptocurrency. I can tell you some symptoms of good cryptocurrencies and bad ones, and I want to tell you this. I want to close this talk with that because a lot of you are going to face a world where cryptocurrency is going to become so important. I would say in the next coming decades, government-backed currency is going to just crumble to dust as we as humans wake up to a new, powerful form of money we've never had before. So I want you to think whenever you encounter a new cryptocurrency, I get it so much. People Facebook message me and ask me like, hey Katie, have you heard of this amazing new thing? Here's the checklist. Is this cryptocurrency attempting to enrich someone or attempting to empower you? Is this cryptocurrency something that we really can't live without, something that does something new and bold that we've never seen before as a species? Because Bitcoin did. Ethereum is one that you may have heard of, and even though it's deeply flawed, and I'm not a fan personally, it attempted to do something we've never seen before. At least that. Monero did something we've never seen before. Private, untraceable money, tumbled at the protocol level. But if I'm going to make a coin that's going to be used to buy and sell cars, okay, cool, but what does that do that Bitcoin doesn't already do? I can already use Bitcoin to buy cars. In fact, there's a site called Moon Lambo. You can go buy for 30 or 40 Bitcoins a car now. So what does your cryptocurrency do that another cryptocurrency is not doing? How are you ethically launching it? And why is it something that humanity can't live without? Because the future is going to be a lot of competing blockchains, but we don't need a lot of blockchains. We need a few base level blockchains from which we can push and pull value on a very simple fundamental level. And then what that enables us to do is build value structures on top of that. I want to close. Do I have a few more minutes? Okay, cool. If you want to know the future of blockchains, I can tell you what the future is going to be, because I've seen it myself, and it's beautiful what's going to happen. It's beautiful. It sounds a little unbelievable now, but it won't in about 10, 15 years. That virtual reality and augmented reality, these secondary layers of existence, are going to become so important. Most of us already have a secondary layer in our lives. We live through Instagram, Facebook. We have an augmented reality we already live in. And this is only going to increase as it becomes easier to access augmented reality, where you're wearing glasses or contacts or something very, very small that allows you to see a whole different level of the world that you can't even see. I mean, fashion's cool and all, but what if I, for a few hundred points, could buy a nice flaming cloak and I'd be wearing that up here? Or you could buy a halo, but of course only if you're plugged into the second level can you see this. Access, tokens, are going to become incredibly valuable here. And a couple of technologies, Ethereum attempts to do it all at once. There's one called Counterparty, which attempts to build on top of Bitcoin. Counterparty attempts to take little tiny pieces of Bitcoin and turn them into creative, colorful tokens that can represent anything. So you're all familiar with the game of Monopoly, right? Board game? The core of Monopoly is rolling dice and moving pieces. That's Bitcoin. That's the proof of work that causes this whole system to work. But that's not interesting. That's not how Monopoly became the best board game in the world. It became that way because those pieces moving around in those dice let us trade properties and scheme and dream and create abstract empires. That's the future. It's finding good, quality, base level technology and then building very creative, colorful structures on top of it. Secondary, tertiary layers, and then complex relationships between those assets that are going to control access to environments, to clothes, to all kinds of resources and secondary layers, which, by the way, are going to be populated by AI agents that are going to seamlessly interact with humanity. It's going to be so beautiful. I can't wait. So this is the current singularity we're living through. And I am so, so proud to be surfing it with you. Most of us saw the rise of the internet, and this is the rise of a new type of money that is going to radically reshape our civilization, give power back to us. And honestly, if you're hearing about it now, you're one of the luckiest people in the world. And I am proud to be a resource for you to understand this better, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me today. Thank you guys so much.